think that the entire way that we reacted to COVID kind of exposes all of this. I think it does so in bright and dramatic colors, which is it really is kind of the first modern civilization that has willingly sacrificed the young to placate the old. And there is no other way to describe it. I mean, some people will reject the premise, but we went from shutting down schools because it might hurt kids to shutting down schools because they might transmit a virus to grandma. That's a totally different moral argument, by the way. Totally different. The first moral argument is like, okay, it might kill young people. I get that. The next is, oh, now they might get infected and then it might kill grandma. I'm not into that. Obviously, I want to protect seniors, but that's a totally different argument, which is like, okay, we must inhibit your development. We must suppress your life experience and your activities because you might then hurt the generation that does not have as many years left to live. And so, yes, I think an intergenerational apology is necessary, totally. And I will say that kind of that 35 to 54-year-old bracket is I think it is going to be, in my opinion, the great swing to the right that no one expected.
But you said something interesting there about the intergenerational version of this. And I've been thinking about this a lot, that so many of the people that are in power right now, or at least appear to be in power, say Joe Biden, say Nancy Pelosi, say, any of these people, really any of them. You can, Dianne Feinstein, who everyone knows is almost incapacitated at this point. Just the amount of I guess they're upper end boomers, but they're also the last of the great generation, something like that. But these people that are in their, say, mid-70s and up, that are still clinging to power, Nancy Pelosi with that ridiculous re-election video from 2 weeks ago. And it's like, lady, you're 81, go be a grandma, like enough. Do you think there's something, what do you think that is psychologically maybe about that generation that they can't let go? Because that does seem to be a big problem here. And I've seen in the last couple of weeks that suddenly Gen X, I'm 45, right in the middle of Gen X, like my generation, you're a little younger than me, so you're Gen Y, is that fair to say?
I'm millennial. Yeah.
You're millennial, no offense. But the 35, right. But the 35, 36 to say 54-year-olds, we just haven't had our chance yet because for some reason those people kept hanging on at every level. Do you think there's something psychologically going on there that didn't allow them to let go?
Yeah, you're going to get me in a lot of trouble, Dave, because we talk about this a lot. And the angriest emails I get are on this topic. So buckle up, I suppose. All right. You said something super interesting, which Nancy Pelosi, go be a grandma. And she kind of still sees herself as this like 33-year-old kind of like AIDS crusader in West San Francisco that is
the
going to take over
eyebrows keep getting higher.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? Which is like, okay, like you've had your chance. Go look beyond yourself. That's what a grandma's all about, right?
Yeah.
Like go look towards the next generation, and are you actually preserving things that are beautiful, true, and good? For her, it's kind of like, no, I still have to have that one more election cycle. You don't understand, because that's when the real revolution is going to happen. And so, look, I mean, it's the tyranny of the septuagenarians and the octogenarians. And there's a lot of great people in the 70s and 80s category in our country. It just so happens none of them are in leadership right now.
Right.
So it just so happens that the cream whatever's risen to the top isn't the best. And so you kind of have a through line of Biden and Schumer and Pelosi that have been in this shtick for 30 or 40 years, literally. And they don't really care about the damage they're leaving to the next generation. It's kind of like they want to have their 2 to 4 years to rule over the ashes, and they're going to die. And I hate to be so morbid about it, but they're on the back nine of the back nine. They're on like hole 17, right? And so you got to start to all of a sudden look like who's the next group of people that are going to be playing. Now, you've had Eric Weinstein on your program before. He talks about the ego, the embedded growth obligation. I think that's a really smart perspective about how this is a generation that has literally experienced nothing but prosperity economically their entire life and has gotten used to it and acts as if that is something that is just kind of baked in to human existence. Things get better, don't get in my way. But I think that the entire way that we reacted to COVID kind of exposes all of this. I think it does so in bright and dramatic colors, which is it really is kind of the first modern civilization that has willingly sacrificed the young to placate the old. And there is no other way to describe it. I mean, some people will reject the premise, but we went from shutting down schools because it might hurt kids to shutting down schools because they might transmit a virus to grandma. That's a totally different moral argument, by the way. Totally different. The first moral argument is like, okay, it might kill young people. I get that. The next is, oh, now they might get infected and they might kill grandma. I'm not into that. Obviously, I want to protect seniors, but that's a totally different argument, which is like, okay, we must inhibit your development. We must suppress your life experience and your activities because you might then hurt the generation that does not have as many years left to live. And so, yes, I think an intergenerational apology is necessary, totally. And I will say that kind of that 35 to 54-year-old bracket is I think it is going to be, in my opinion, the great swing to the right that no one expected. I think there's more red pilling happening between ages 35 to 54. And there's a lot of boomers that are really conservative, and God bless them for that, and they continue to be. But there is kind of this question of like the 42-year-old mom that looks, she's like, wait a second, I wasn't able to get the career advancement that maybe I wanted because I had to wait for boomers to age out. And now my kids have to wear masks because a bunch of septuagenarians are worried about this. And I think that we're experiencing the climax of generational tension. And we saw this. I'll say one final thing in this, Dave, which is this is nothing new. This kind of immoral behavior first manifested itself through fiscal policy. A generation that was willing to borrow hundreds of billions of dollars to add to the national debt in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, with no regard for the fiscal health of future generations, is the same type of generation that locks down seventh graders and doesn't think anything of it. It's like, that we just do that around here, okay? Like, we'll put their life on hold, we'll steal their savings, we'll steal their purchasing power because I'm important and I matter. And I think that betrays the social contract. I think it goes directly against what it means to be a patriotic citizen.
You say 35 to 54 are going to be the red pill generation. It's like, I'm 45. I know a little something about this red pill situation, right? So it's like, I'm with you, man. I feel it. You see those pictures online of, Stacey Abrams unmasked in front of the kids and Hochul over in New York smiling with the kids. It's like, these kids are going to do some pretty horrible things to old people one day. You can really feel it. Do you, not just to talk about it at an idea level, but because you're around so many college kids, I mean, they're young adults, through Turning Point, have you seen a real shift in their attitudes on this stuff? We go to the events. When I go to Turning Point events, it's always so positive and fun and all that stuff. But like, have you seen a difference in the way they're reacting with the ideas or a resentment or whatever it might be?
Definitely on the center right, for sure. Our students are pushing back like crazy. We have a list. I was just going through it. We have 35 schools that have staged walkouts in the last 24 hours at Turning Point USA over the mask mandates. And we support them 100%. We're helping them with PR support and times legal support, all that stuff, because the mask mandates have gone out of control. But I will say, Dave, that the mass propaganda, dare I say mass formation psychosis.
You're trying to get us both taken out, man?
Yeah, there we go. Well, I figure this will be on local, so we know the owner. They won't.
Goodbye, Spotify.
So, yeah, exactly. But that kind of mass propaganda campaign has really worked on a lot of young people. And it's kind of a great irony where, and this is a stereotype, but the average 70-year-old, 60 or 70-year-old right now is far less concerned about COVID than I think the average 17-year-old. And that's a stereotype. That's like a generalization, I should say. But there has been a lot of induced fear amongst high school and college kids completely and totally unnecessarily. And there's a cost to pay for that. It's going to be a generation that is the least free-thinking generation, absent our intervention and trying to get them their humanity back. It's the most medicated generation, most suicidal generation, the most confused generation, the most directionalist generation. But we're starting to see some pushback against this and some hopefully righting of that trajectory. But I don't think it's enough. I don't think that this is going to fix itself. I think that we need, and I don't say this lightly, you know that I'm a small government conservative guy, but I think that we need a collective intervention to try to fix some of these trends that have gone so awry. I don't just think that we're like, oh, well, we shut everything down for 2 years. We vaccinated kids who didn't need it and put masks on them. They had no social development. They are not speaking the way they should. The IQs are stunted. Like everything's going to kind of sort itself out. I'm not as convinced of that. I'm not. I think there's some very interesting, bold, robust, entrepreneurial, and creative ideas that could probably fix this. But I'll be honest, Dave, there's been a little glimmer of hope among some of the young people, but it's nowhere near the type of rebellion that I would like to see. It isn't. I saw far more activism and energy around Greta Thunberg's "the world is ending" climate change propaganda, and far more energy amongst the average high school kid around Floydapalooza than I did around mask mandates, vaccine mandates, or being locked down and not being able to see their friends.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.